3 seconds of silence, only the crackling of the radio and the wind cutting against the skin like a never-ending storm. I can't feel my hands. Pause. On the snow-covered highway, the patrol car's lights draw a strip of light in the darkness, revealing the little girl alone, her face wet with tears. The air grows heavy, a silence that grips the heart. The policeman takes a step. Her family is nowhere to be seen, and the sense of danger grows like a whisper. Then the police dog stops in front of her, and the officers suddenly freeze, as if they had seen something no one wants to name. Her name was Helena, 7 years old, a coat too thin for that storm that does not forgive. The cold bit into the skin, and each breathing her skirt was short and trembling, as if the heart is, if learning to hit again. All around, only silence, the hard shine of light reflecting on the ice, and the darkness swallowing the road. There was nothing. Mother, there was family, just the certainty of being alone. Helena clenched her hands to contain the tears, trying to remember a voice that promised protection. The world seemed too big, and fear filled everything, as if nothing else existed. Hope that night. The policeman, Miguel, he had been working for 12 hours. Long patrol, cold coffee, heavy thoughts. He carried in his chest an old weariness, an inexplicable grief. Alma, who still believed in Faithus, the last thread. Beside him, the dog. Thor, German shepherd, he continued calmly, leolatentive, breathing the cold air as if reading invisible stories. Miguel observed the scene without haste, trying to keep his voice steady, because children sense the trembling of adults. In the background, the radio murmured codes, a light it was blinking, and Thessalon's it seemed to demand caution. Nothing needed explaining yet, simply being there was enough. Before that night, everything was routine. Common approaches, empty roads, the constant sound of tires on ice. Miguel knew the way, he knew the weariness, he knew the love discreetly protecting without seeking applause. Thor knew the work, his partner's steps, the smell of metal and fuel. Nothing seemed out of place, until something changed in the air, a detail no one noticed. The wind carried a strange, dry, almost bitter odor, and Heart Miguel sped up for no clear reason. The girl remained motionless, her eyes wide, breathing in short. It was still too early for conclusions, too early for certainties. "If you can hear me, stay calm," Miguel said softly, inviting the audience to do the same. "Short turn on notifications, follow along. Stories like this require your presence." Helena blinked, swallowed her tears, held back her hope like someone holding a thread. Thor kept his gaze fixed, too still, silence attentive, firm posture, loyalty without a gesture. Nobody noticed the detail, nobody commented on the shiver that ran through them. The world seemed normal, and that's precisely why it was frightening. Something was wrong, but it didn't yet have a name. And then, light cold, no one dared break the pause. Thor did not advance, nor did he retreat. The body of Puppet stiffened, as if the ground had changed texture beneath its paws. The wind brought a drier, almost biting cold, and the breathing, his gaze slowed down, became more controlled. Miguel noticed it first in his eyes. It wasn't aggression, it was focus. A deep, long-standing focus, of arrow trained to protect lives. The silence, it thickened around it, and even the light, the vehicle seemed less stable. Helena watched, uncomprehending, clutching her thin coat with tears contained. Thor inhaled again, deeply, intently, as if reading something invisible. Something there didn't belong on that road. Miguel knew every gesture of that man. Puppy, they had already been through rescues, chases, long nights, but this was different. Thor didn't bark, didn't pull on the leash. He just breathed deeply, sensing the air with almost human precision. One metallic smell, subtle, mixed with ice, with road oil, with silence. Yes, Storm. Miguel felt a shiver run down the back of his neck. It wasn't fear, it was alertness. Helena took an involuntary step back, a pure childlike instinct. Alone, the heart. Her heart was beating rapidly, visible in the movement of her chest. Thor turned his head slowly, staring at the side of the track, as if asking for attention without words. The road seemed too empty. No cars, no sound besides the wind and the breathing contained by the three. Miguel followed the gaze of Puppy, and he noticed something strange in the snow, almost imperceptible marks, as if someone had passed there and tried to erase their own footprints. Thor didn't move forward, he just leaned forward, maintaining his posture, loyalty firmly beside Helena. It was silent protection. The girl felt it, even without understanding. She stopped crying. The heart. He slowed down a little. Miguel thought about the radio, about backup, but something held him back, the feeling that any rash move would break a fragile balance. Thor took another deep breath, this time closer to the ground. The snow crunched beneath his paws, a low, almost respectful sound. Miguel noticed the change in rhythm. The puppy eye was comparing smells, separating invisible layers of air. Light, darkness, metal, fabric, human coldness, all mixed together. Helena watched the two, hugging her own body as if searching, protection in herself. Miguel knelt down, remaining there at the moment of Puppy, without touching. He knew that moment demanded absolute trust. Thor raised his eyes for a second, a quick, firm look that said everything without explaining anything. The wind changed direction. It was subtle, but enough to make Thor tense his muscles again. Puppy. He took a step to the side, positioning his body between Helena and the road. A simple gesture, but full of meaning. Love and loyalty. Miguel felt the heart squeeze. This wasn't automatic training, it was a choice. The girl noticed and instinctively moved closer, lightly touching the warm back of the puppy. Thor didn't move. He just kept feeling the air, attentive to destination. Something seemed to be forming there. Something was hidden, not far away, not visible, but present. Miguel examined his surroundings more carefully. An old lamppost partially covered in ice. A section of low fence almost swallowed by the snow. Nothing caught the eye. Still the puppy, she kept her focus on that specific point, as if there were an invisible thread connecting everything. Helena began to tremble, not just from the cold. The silence. The prolonged effort was tiring. Miguel took a deep breath, remembering other rescues, other nights when faith in the instinct of hero, the four-legged creature, saved lives. He decided not to interrupt. Waiting is also a way of acting. Thor moved again, now 2 short, measured steps. The leash remained loose. Miguel let go. The puppy. He lowered his head, sniffing the snow near the fence. The air there seemed different, heavier. Miguel felt it too, as if the darkness, it had density. Helena squinted, trying to see something that wasn't visible. The heart had hit her hard again. Thor stopped. He froze. It wasn't fear, it was confirmation. Miguel realized it and felt a chill that didn't come from storm, something there needed to be seen. But it wasn't the right time yet. The radio crackled again, breaking the silence for a second. Miguel quickly turned it off. Any sound seemed intrusive. Thor raised his head, attentive to the human gesture, but soon returned his focus to the ground. Helena was breathing rapidly, small clouds of vapor rising in the icy air. Miguel realized that the girl had been there for far too long, alone, exposed, vulnerable. That in itself was already a problem, but the puppy, he insisted. Not on the child, on the surroundings. As if to say that the danger was not what it seemed. Miguel tried to rationalize. It could just be buried trash, a lost object. A mistake of instinct, but Thor didn't make mistakes like that. Puppy, he adjusted his body position, planting his paws firmly, facing the base of the fence. The wind brought that feeling again, metallic smell, now clearer. Miguel felt his stomach clench. Helena frowned, confused, but strangely calm. The lavescent puppy, it conveyed a sense of security. Miguel realized they were being watched by something that had no eyes, only consequences. Thor took a step back, then another, as if marking distance. Unusual behavior. Miguel understood. He wasn't supposed to move forward yet. He was supposed to observe. Puppy. He wanted space, a wide view. Miguel stood up slowly, widening his field of vision. A light. The light from the car reflected off something irregular under the snow, almost imperceptible. It was impossible to identify. Helena's eyes widened, sensing the change in the weather. Thessalence. It weighed on him again. Miguel felt that familiar sensation of something big about to be revealed, but still too distant to be touched. Time seemed to stretch out. Each second lasted longer than it should have. Thor maintained absolute focus, the breathing controlled, his body ready but restrained. Miguel trusted in that balance. The puppy, she didn't want hasty action. She wanted a conscious decision. Helena sat down in the snow, tired, leaning on her knee. Miguel noticed and approached her, keeping Thor in his field of vision. Family, the girl's fate was still a mystery. Everything there was a mystery, and the instinct of hero, the canine instinct, seemed to be the only reliable compass. A distant crack echoed, perhaps ice-breaking, perhaps something else. Thor pricked up his ears immediately. Puppy. He turned his head toward the sound, then returned to his starting point. Double confirmation. Miguel felt the heart accelerate. Helena swallowed hard, holding back new ones. Tears. A storm, it seemed to be drawing closer again, the wind stronger, the snow denser. The atmosphere closed in as if trying to prevent any escape. Miguel realized that this was no longer just a chance encounter on the road. It was a decisive moment. Thor brought his snout close to the snow again, now more carefully, almost respectfully. Puppy. He didn't dig. He didn't touch. He merely marked the spot with his gaze and stepped back. Miguel understood the message. This needed to be examined methodically, not impulsively. The ethics of Frescuit begins before the action. Helena watched in silence, fear giving way to a tense curiosity. Heart it was still beating fast, but there was Shopper there, supported by the firm presence of Puppy. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. He could ignore it, call for backup, take the child away, or he could trust completely in that silent instinct. Thor waited. He didn't pressure him. Puppy, I knew the choice was human. Loyalty, don't force, accompany. Helena looked at Miguel, seeking guidance, as if she already saw him as part of her family that strange night. The wind howled louder. The road remained empty. The world seemed suspended, waiting for a step forward. Miguel decided to stay. Not to advance yet, not to retreat, to remain vigilant. Thor relaxed his muscles slightly, an almost imperceptible sign of approval. The puppy, she kept her gaze fixed on the spot under the snow, keeping the secret for a few more minutes. Helena breathed a little easier, feeling protected, even without understanding why. The silence, he returned, deep, heavy. Something was about to be discovered. Not yet, but soon. And when he came to light, nothing there would ever be the same. Miguel carefully turned on the radio, requesting backup without undue urgency. I didn't want to alarm anyone before being sure. The response came from a distance, muffled by the silence, yes, storm. Meanwhile, Thor remained motionless, alert, like an ancient sentinel. Puppy, he didn't insist, didn't pull, didn't bark. He just was. This behavior began to bother Miguel. Normally, when there was real danger, Thor reacted more clearly. This restraint raised doubts. Helena watched everything, sitting in the snow, hugging her knees, the heart still racing, but curious. Instinct told me something was important, but reason hadn't yet grasped it. The minutes passed slowly, alight. The light from the car reflected off the snow, creating deceptive shadows. Miguel walked a few steps around, trying to see what the puppy he could see. Nothing. No visible objects, no human movement. The wind brought only cold and that faint metallic smell that kept appearing and disappearing. Miguel began to question himself. Tiredness? Overconfidence? Perhaps Thor was reacting to darkness, to the child's isolation, to the hostile climate itself. It was possible. Police officers make mistakes. Dogs can make mistakes too. Or not. Helena began to speak in a low voice, almost a whisper. She said she was waiting for Mother, come back. He said they told her to stay there. Quiet. Miguel felt a tightness in his chest. That changed everything and, at the same time, explained nothing. Thor tilted his head at the word mother, but quickly returned his focus to the ground. The answer wasn't there. Miguel felt the conflict growing within him. To protect the child immediately, or to investigate something that wasn't even clear. A loyalty. The protocol was beginning to compete for space with the faith-no instinct. When the headlights of another vehicle appeared in the distance, Miguel felt both relief and pressure. A colleague got out, glanced quickly at the scene and frowned. He froze because of that, he asked, pointing at Thor. The tone wasn't mocking, but genuine doubt. Miguel didn't answer immediately. Thor remained insolent, indifferent to the presence of the other police officer. Helena watched the adults, feeling the tension shift. The atmosphere was no longer just cold, it was suspicious. The question hung in the air, what if, puppy, was I wrong? The second policeman approached the indicated spot, lightly kicking the snow. Nothing, just hard ice. There's nothing here, he said, shrugging. Miguel felt the weight of the decision tighten around him. Thor didn't react to the kick, but his eyes followed the movement with absolute attention. It was as if he were saying, not yet. Doubt began to taint the moment. Helena lowered her head, feeling herself again, alone amidst confused adults. The love-excellent puppy, it was the only constant that did not waver. Miguel knelt down again, now closer to the spot. He touched the snow carefully, feeling its different texture, too compacted to be natural. His colleague watched skeptically. You're seeing things, he murmured. Miguel took a deep breath, remembering others, rescues where the truth seemed invisible at first. Thor moved a little closer, not to touch, just to confirm. The puppy he maintained a wise, almost human demeanor. This further confused those who expected an obvious reaction. The discussion began. The colleague suggested taking Helena to a shelter immediately and filing a police report afterward. Miguel partially agreed. The child needed warmth, care, and family, but something prevented him from simply leaving. Thor remained firm, now seated, as if guarding the place. The gesture was interpreted as obstinacy by some, as exaggeration by others. Doubt grew stronger. The audience, if they had been there, would also have begun to question. What if that hero was he mistaken for the first time? Helena started crying again, as tears slipping away silently. The cold and the weight were taking their toll. Miguel wrapped her in a thermal blanket, trying to convey protection. Thor watched the scene, his gaze gentle, but soon returned to his spot in the snow. Two parallel realities were forming, human urgency and the patience of instinct. Miguel felt the internal division growing. Choosing wrong could be costly, not choosing could be too. Another radio crackled. More questions. The atmosphere was starting to get heavy. Miguel realized he needed to decide whether he would fully trust Puppy or he would give in to the pressure. Thor didn't move. He didn't insist. He just stayed there, like someone who knows the right time hasn't come yet. Thessalence. Between human words, she spoke louder than any argument. Helena, even tired, looked at Thor as if he were a beacon in the sky. Darkness. Miguel recalled the training, the statistics, the times when canine instinct overcame equipment and protocols. He also remembered the criticism, the reports, the internal doubts. His colleague crossed his arms, impatient. "We can't stay here all night." Thor slowly raised his head, looking at Miguel. It wasn't a demand, it was trust, loyalty. That look almost hurt. Miguel felt something align within him. The doubt didn't disappear, but it took shape. He asked for a few more minutes. That's all. His colleague sighed, reluctantly agreeing. Thor stood up, took a short, precise step, marking the point again. Helena watched, now insolence, as if he understood that something important was at stake. The wind died down for a moment. A storm. He seemed to hold his breath along with everyone else there. The moment was approaching, but he still wouldn't reveal his secret. Miguel grabbed a portable flashlight, pointing it at light at a low angle. The snow reflected, obscuring for a second. Nothing clear appeared. His colleague shook his head as if to say, "I told you so." Thor didn't react to the flashlight. He just waited. Miguel turned off the light. Perhaps seeing too much was the problem. Perhaps it was necessary to feel. The heart it was pounding, not from fear, but from anticipation. Helena murmured something almost inaudible. He said he had seen a man there before. Miguel froze inside. His colleague turned around immediately. Questions began to arise. Thor tilted his head slightly, attentive to the child's voice. This changed the weight of the doubt. It was no longer just instinct against reason. It was a fragile memory trying to emerge. Helena seemed frightened for having spoken. Michael approached, his voice calm, love-in posture. She explained little, broken, confused sentences. A car was stopped. An adult told them to wait. Nothing concrete. His colleague still seemed skeptical, but less certain. Thor sniffed the air again, now more intensely. The metallic smell it appeared again, more present now. Miguel felt the shiver return. The puppy, he wasn't reacting to the child. She was reacting to her surroundings. Tension grew, doubt still lingered, but I was beginning to make room for something more serious. Miguel realized this was the turning point. Trusting now meant going against others' opinions. Not trusting might mean leaving something serious behind. Thor remained there, hero silent, not asking for applause, just asking for attention. The destination, he seemed focused on that patch of snow. Miguel decided to investigate thoroughly, not yet to act, but to look beyond the surface. His colleague took a deep breath, resigned. Helena gripped the blanket tightly. Thor positioned himself beside Miguel, ready but restrained. Silence. It reasserted itself, dense, almost respectful. Something was about to emerge from darkness for the light, not entirely yet. But the path was open. The air felt different now, heavier, more definitive. Miguel sensed there was no turning back. Doubt still lingered, but it no longer paralyzed him. Thor waited patiently, as one who knows the truth doesn't run away. Helena watched everything, sensing that this night would mark her, Alma, forever. A hope it emerged timidly, mixed with fear. The next step would change everything. His colleague stepped back, making room. Miguel knelt again, now more calmly, more focused. Thor watched his every move. Puppy. He seemed to know that the moment of revelation was approaching, but it wasn't complete yet. Thessalon's. It closed around them like a veil. Something was there, waiting to be seen. And no one doubted it anymore. The wind has almost completely died down. A storm, he paused. Miguel took a deep breath. Thor remained motionless. Helena held her breath as well. The world seemed suspended, awaiting the exact moment. The truth was near, but still hidden beneath the snow, beneath fear, beneath human doubt. The next segment would no longer be about questioning, it would be about discovering. Miguel knelt down carefully, as if asking permission from the ground. Light, the flashlight, was switched off. He preferred his eyes, his sense of touch, the breathing calmed down. Thor stayed by his side, silence, absolute, guard posture. The snow seemed untouched, but there was a slight indentation, a difference that, puppy, he had felt it before any human. Miguel touched the surface with the back of his hand. Intense cold, uneven compaction. It wasn't natural. Helena watched quietly, holding the blanket, the heart beating like a restrained drum. The wind ceased completely. A storm. He paused, as if waiting to see what would come next. With 2 fingers, Miguel slowly pushed the snow aside. Nothing abrupt, nothing hasty. The ethics of rescue, he urged caution. Thor tilted his head, attentive to the movement, without intervening. A dark fabric emerged from beneath the white layer. Miguel stopped. He breathed. He looked at the puppy, seeking confirmation. Thor blinked slowly, a minimal, almost human gesture. Miguel continued. The fabric had a synthetic texture. It wasn't ordinary trash. Helena fastened the breathing, eyes fixed. Thesilence. It weighed more than any sound. This was not a spectacular discovery. It was a discreet, dangerous revelation that demanded respect. Miguel pushed aside more snow and noticed a rigid bulge under the fabric. He didn't open it. He didn't touch it beyond what was necessary. He beckoned his colleague with a short gesture. The other approached, now serious, doubt giving way to attention. Thor kept his distance, as if guarding the perimeter. Loyalty, there. It wasn't a spectacle. It was restraint. Helena began to tremble again, not from cold, but from awareness. Something important was happening. The heart Miguel sped up, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. Whatever it was, it required method. My colleague shone his flashlight at a low angle. Light, it revealed tape marks, precise folds, careful concealment. Nothing improvised. Miguel felt the weight of the confirmation. Thor didn't move. That puppy, he didn't celebrate successes. He prevented tragedies. Helena looked away for a second, instinctively protected by Miguel's body. Love it manifested itself there in simple gestures. Darkness. Those around seemed to take a step back. The truth was beginning to take shape without words. Miguel signaled to step back 1 meter. Safety first. His colleague agreed. Thor followed the movement, keeping his focus on the point. Thesilence. He regained control. Miguel took a deep breath, remembering training sessions, reports, long nights. This wasn't an isolated find. It was a link. A destination crossing the wrong road. Helena watched, confused but feeling strangely safe. The presence of puppy, it was an invisible wall. The world seemed to contain the breathing along with them. The radio was switched on in a low voice, words measured, without alarmism. Clear procedures. Miguel described what he saw without over-interpreting. His colleague nodded, now fully engaged. Thor remained motionless, as if he knew his role was to watch, not to act. Helena was moved a few steps away, always within visual range. A family hers was still a void to be filled, but the immediate danger needed to be understood first. Heart Miguel stood firm. The truth demands calm. While they awaited instructions, Miguel observed his surroundings once more. Near the fence, old tire tracks emerged from under the snow, not fresh but real. A pattern. Thor inhaled again, a short breath, confirming. The metallic smell it was clearer now, less scattered. A light, the lantern's outline revealed contours that had previously gone unnoticed. Silence, it was no longer empty. It was informative. Every detail gained weight. Helena seemed to understand that this night held something greater than the initial fear. Miguel returned to the spot wearing appropriate gloves. He didn't open it. He only confirmed the integrity of the packaging. Procedure. His colleague took notes. Thor maintained his posture, eyes alert, loyalty absolute. A darkness, it seemed to recede a little further. Helena sat down, exhausted but calm. The lover-silent puppy, it made a difference. There was no rush. The revelation needed to be complete, not theatrical. The reinforcement was confirmed. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling a suppressed sense of relief. Heart. He slowed down a little. Thor relaxed his muscles slightly, an almost imperceptible sign that the immediate risk was under control. Helena yawned, tiredness overcoming fear. Storm, it seemed distant now. The world was regaining its rhythm. The truth, however, still needed to be connected to people. Who put that there? Why? And why was a child involved? Miguel approached Helena, kneeling at her level. His voice was low, his words simple. He asked again about the man, the car. Helena answered with short phrases, fragmented memories. Thor tilted his head, attentive to the nuances of her voice. Puppy. She seemed to be able to distinguish between fear and memory. A faith, his instinct confirmed it. His colleague listened, now without skepticism. A hope it emerged timidly. There was a clear path to protect the child and prevent something worse. Miguel carefully connected the dots. He didn't finish aloud. Not yet. The silence, it protects against premature conclusions. Thor remained there, hero discreetly guarding the place. A light. The car's glare reflected off the snow, which was less hard now. Helena could breathe easier. Love and to loyalty. They had created a safe space in the middle of darkness. The revelation didn't need spectacle to be powerful. When reinforcements arrived, procedures aligned. Isolation of the area, registration, continuity. Miguel explained everything precisely, without exaggeration. Thor was recognized with a nod, a brief touch on the back. The puppy she accepted without seeking attention. Helena was handled with care, a reinforced blanket and warm water. Family, it would still be located. The heart Miguel felt the responsibility lessen somewhat, but not disappear. The team confirmed. There was illicit material hidden methodically. It wasn't a casual abandonment. It was part of something bigger. The child wasn't the target. It was the shield. Silence. What followed was heavy, human. Miguel closed his eyes for a second. Thor remained still. A loyalty. There, a silent tragedy had been averted. There was no celebration. There was respect. Miguel looked at Helena, now warm, her eyes tired. She returned his gaze with confused gratitude. Thor approached slowly, allowing a brief touch. Helena smiled for the first time. Small, true. The love finds simple ways. A darkness, he didn't win that night. A light, that was enough. His colleague took a deep breath, silently acknowledging the error of his doubt. Michael nodded. It wasn't about being right. It was about protecting. Thor sat down, vigilant, hero without applause. The destination, it had passed by there and changed course. I hope he didn't shout, he whispered. A storm it restarted gently, almost symbolically. The site was handed over for final procedures. Miguel felt the peace approaching slowly, deservedly. Thor walked beside her, his posture calm. Helena was led away safely. The night continued. The world, too. Thessalon's, it was silence again. No threat. A light. He blinked one last time. The heart Miguel thanked him silently. Thor continued, loyalty intact. The revelation was complete. Helena was removed from the highway in respectful silence. The thermal blanket enveloped her small body, and each breathing. Now her voice was less shaky. Miguel walked beside her, attentive to each step, while Thor followed a little behind, his posture calm, but vigilant. The puppy. There was no need to signal danger anymore. Its presence was enough. Light. The vehicles created a safe corridor in darkness of the night. The heart Miguel was still tense, but he was beginning to feel something different, something close to peace. Nothing was completely resolved, but lives had been lost, protected. Inside the heated vehicle, Helena finally relaxed. Tears. The thoughts ceased, replaced by a profound weariness. Miguel offered warm water, spoke little, respecting the child's pace. Thor lay down near the door, creating an invisible barrier between Helena and the outside world. Loyalty, it wasn't symbolic there. It was physical, silence. Now it was comfortable, almost welcoming. For the first time that night, the hope it seemed concrete, not just a fragile wish. The agents who arrived later worked methodically. They isolated the area, documented everything, and confirmed the seriousness of what had been found. Miguel watched from a distance, without any hurry to interfere. He knew that the essential work had already been done. Thor remained calm, observing the movements, recognizing patterns but without tension. Puppy, it had fulfilled its primary role. The consequence was beginning to take shape. An interrupted route, a broken plan, a child out of immediate danger. When the social worker arrived, Helena was carefully introduced. Human contact now needed to continue. Miguel explained the bare minimum, preserving the child's dignity. Thor observed everything, attentive to the voices, to the intentions. The love-silent puppy, it seemed to ease each transition. Helena held Miguel's hand for a moment, as if thanking him without words. The heart, he squeezed it tightly, aware of the weight and privilege of that moment. Official confirmation came gradually. The material found was part of a larger operation. The child had been used as a distraction, not as a participant. Darkness, that strategy caused silent indignation among the agents. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of anger and relief. Thor remained neutral, as if he knew that human justice now needed to take its course. Destination, it had been changed, and that was enough. Helena was taken to a safe place. Before leaving, she turned her face towards Thor. She didn't say anything. She just smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. Thor approached slowly, allowing her to touch his head for a second. That simple gesture sealed something invisible. The hero, he didn't ask for recognition. He was simply there. Miguel watched, feeling his eyes welling up with tears. A faith, that instinct had been rewarded. The road was empty again. Storm, it was slowing down, as if it too had fulfilled its role. Miguel and Thor walked together to the vehicle. Thessalon's. Now it had a different weight, a lighter one. The radio transmitted routines, common codes. Life went on. But something had changed inside Miguel. The heart, she carried with her a renewed certainty. Trusting is not weakness, it is courage. In the report, Miguel described the facts precisely. No exaggerations, no fabricated heroism, just actions, signs, decisions. Thor was cited as an essential piece. The puppy, he slept peacefully beside the table, as if all that bureaucratic world didn't concern him. Loyalty, it doesn't need paper to exist. Even so, Miguel insisted on documenting it. Consequences are also memories. The investigation progressed in the following weeks. More seizures occurred. Other routes were identified. Miguel followed from a distance, focused on his daily work. He knew that night had been just a fragment of something bigger. Thor was still by his side on new patrols, always alert, always calm. Rescue, that child's memory echoed in every future decision, a reminder that the invisible detail can save lives. Helena was located with suitable family members. The information arrived in a brief phone call. Miguel hung up the phone silently, feeling a relief that took time to form. Thor noticed the change in his partner's body and approached, touching his snout to his hand. The love, the simplicity of that gesture said it all. Peace, it was beginning to settle in more permanently. Days later, Miguel returned to that highway. Not out of obligation, but out of inner necessity. The snow had already melted in parts. The place seemed ordinary, almost banal. Thor walked beside him without reacting. Puppy, I knew there was no more danger there. Silence. There was only silence. Miguel took a deep breath, feeling the symbolic closure of that chapter. The colleague who had doubted that night commented on the matter in a low voice. Not as criticism, but as a lesson. Miguel listened and nodded. Thor remained lying down, indifferent to human judgment. A loyalty, he doesn't demand apologies, he just moves on. The atmosphere was different now, more aware, more attentive to signs that don't appear in reports. Miguel noticed changes in himself. He began to listen more, to observe more, to trust his trained instincts, both human and canine. Helena's story wasn't something to be told in epic tones. It was an intimate memory, a reminder of responsibility. Thor continued as always, Hera discreetly, without knowing that he had changed destinies. On a quiet morning, Miguel found a simple letter at the base. It didn't have a full name. Just a childlike thank you note, written in crooked handwriting. Helena had drawn a puppy. A tall man stood next to a small girl. Miguel closed his eyes for a moment. The heart hit something different. Thor sniffed the paper, curious, then lay down again. The it had found its form. The routine returned to normal, patrols, reports, cold coffee. But something remained, a heightened attention to silence, to the details, to what doesn't shout. Thor remained attentive, but calm. A hope it was now part of everyday life, not as an illusion, but as a practice. Miguel understood that not every victory is visible. Some are merely the absence of tragedy. Thor had prevented something that might never be fully known, and that was enough. Destination, it doesn't need to be celebrated, to be respected. On that particular night, the darkness, he didn't win. A light, it didn't blind them. It just illuminated them enough. Miguel and Thor moved forward, step by step, aware of the weight and beauty of protecting. The story didn't end with applause. It ended with continuity. Helena safe, others protected. One puppy a faithful follower alongside an attentive human, Therskew. The truth doesn't always make the headlines, the silence. The ending was serene. The road was empty. The patrol was complete. Heart in order. Thor walked confidently, loyalty intact, hero invisible to many, essential to some. A peace it didn't fall from the sky. It was built step by step on that cold night. And it remained. Not all danger screams. Some hide in the shadows, silence, and they hope someone will trust their instincts. Thor didn't see a culprit. He saw an invisible risk and chose. Protect when humans learn to listen to loyalty. The heart find light even in darkness. Sometimes heroes don't speak. They remain. If this story touched you, leave a little paw. Leave a comment below.